Question 1. In a modern context of PeopleCode event processing, Alex modifies field change PeopleCode for a critical field in a component that also has row init PeopleCode. Users report that a default value set in row init is being overwritten when they interact with the field. What is the most likely cause? A. Field change executes before row init, overriding its value. B. The field change logic is incorrectly referencing the wrong field. C. Row init runs before field change, but field change overwrites the value afterwards. D. Component push build triggers the value reset each time the page is loaded. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Row init executes before field change when the row buffer is loaded, setting initial values. However, when a user changes a field value, field change is triggered afterward and can overwrite what row init set. This sequence explains why the row init value appears lost. The first option is wrong because field change does not run before row init. The second option is possible but does not inherently follow from event order. Last option is wrong because component push build does not reset values on every field interaction. Question 2. Given the circumstances, Preya is tasked with creating a derived work record to temporarily store calculation results during component processing. Which statement best reflects how PeopleSoft treats such a record in the database? A. Derived work records exist only in the application server's memory and have no physical database table. B. Derived work records are stored in hidden system table accessible only via PeopleCode. C. Derived work records are stored temporarily in global temporary table. D. Derived work records create physical table but are truncated after processing. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Derived work records are purely memory structures on the application server created to hold transient data during processing without a physical database table. This ensures faster access and avoids unnecessary persistence. The second option is incorrect because there is no hidden system table for derived work data. The third is wrong because they are not implemented as database-level temporary tables. The last option, false since no physical table is generated at all. Question 3. While examining a performance issue, Michael finds that his PeopleCode SQLexec statements inside a loop are causing high CPU usage. Which approach best follows PeopleSoft performance tuning guidelines? A. Replace SQLexec calls with create SQL and fetch loop to reuse the cursor. B. Use additional SQLexec calls but split the query into smaller subqueries. C. Move the logic to component push build for single execution. D. Rewrite the loop using field formula PeopleCode for efficiency. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Using create SQL and fetch allows the same SQL cursor to be reused instead of repeatedly passing and executing SQLexec within a loop, significantly improving efficiency. Splitting SQLexec into smaller queries doesn't address repeated execution overhead. Moving logic to component push build may reduce repetition but won't fix cursor inefficiency if multiple executions are still needed. Field formula does not inherently improve loop SQL performance. Question 4. From a practical standpoint, Sarah designs a page with a grid control bound to a derived work record for dynamic calculations. She wants changes in one row to instantly update dependent fields in the same row without saving. Which event is most appropriate? A. Field change event on the triggering field. B. Save as change event on the component. C. Row init event on the record. D. Prebuild event on the component. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Field change executes immediately when a field value changes on the client, allowing instant recalculation of dependent fields. Save push change only runs after save, which is too late for dynamic updates. Row init runs when the row buffer loads, not on user interaction. Prebuild executes before the page loads, so it can't react to live changes. Question 5. The fundamental question is how to ensure proper security when deploying a new page. If a developer creates a page and adds it to a component but forgets to update permission lists, what will happen? A. The page will be visible to all users with access to the component. B. The page will not be accessible unless explicitly added to a permission list. C. The page will be accessible in read-only mode to all users. D. The page will trigger an authorization error upon navigation. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. PeopleSoft security is controlled through permission lists. So even if the page is part of a component, it won't be accessible unless the component and page are linked to role via permission list. The first option is incorrect because component access does not automatically grant page level access. Read-only mode isn't default behavior without explicit configuration, while some scenarios may lead to authorization errors. Correct conceptual rule is that it simply won't be accessible without permissions. Question 6. Taking into account complex component structures, Daniel needs a component to load data differently depending on the user's role. Which event is most appropriate for initial data loading logic based on security context? A. Pre-build event. B. Run-it event. C. Component post-build event. D. Field default event. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Pre-build runs before any data is loaded into the buffer, making it ideal for setting search record criteria or controlling which data loads based on user security context. Run-it only affects row-level initialization, not search criteria. Component post-build occurs after buffer loading, so it's too late to filter. Field default is for setting default values, not controlling data access logic. Question 7. In an effort to improve maintainability, Olivier encapsulates business logic in an application class method instead of inline PeopleCode on multiple events. What is the primary advantage of this approach? A. It improves runtime performance of PeopleCode execution. B. It centralizes logic for reuse and reduces maintenance overhead. C. It automatically secures the logic from unauthorized modification. D. It prevents errors by enforcing compile time type checking. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Centralizing logic in an application class allows reusability across components, ensuring consistent behavior and easier maintenance. Performance is not necessarily improved just by using classes. Security against modification is determined by object security, not code structure. Compile time type checking is limited in PeopleCode, so the fourth option is incorrect. Question 8. With respect to error handling in PeopleCode, Ethan implements a try-catch block to handle an anticipate SQL error. However, the error still causes the program to terminate. What is the most probable reason? A. The catch block was defined for the wrong exception type. B. PeopleCode does not support try-catch for SQL-related errors. C. The try block must be inside an application package to catch errors. D. The error occurred during component processor flow, bypassing PeopleCode. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Try-catch in PeopleCode can handle SQL errors if the correct exception type is caught, such as SQLexec exceptions. If the wrong exception type is specified, the error will propagate. PeopleCode does support try-catch for SQL errors, so the second option is incorrect. The third option is wrong because try-catch can be used outside application packages, while some low-level errors bypass PeopleCode. SQLexec do not inherently bypass it if handled correctly. Question 9. Contrary to popular belief, increasing field length in a record definition can cause issues beyond database schema changes. Which problem is most likely to occur if not thoroughly analyzed? A. Component buffer overflow during processing. B. Misalignment in page layout and display issues. C. Automatic truncation of data during fetch operations. D. SQL optimizer choosing suboptimal execution plans. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Increasing field length can affect indexing and execution plans because larger field sizes may change how the database optimizer processes queries. Buffer overflow is not typically a concern in PeopleSoft. Display misalignment is possible but not the primary conceptual risk. Automatic truncation would not happen just by increasing length. Rather, it could occur when reducing it. Question 10. By evaluating integration requirements, Natalie decides to use Integration Broker to send messages to an external system. Which step is essential for ensuring the message is successfully processed on the external node? A. Setting the message publication contract to active. B. Enabling the node and assigning valid routings configuration. C. Scheduling the message monitor to run continuously. D. Assigning service operation handler and the PeopleCode app package. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. For A message to reach an external node. The node must be enabled and properly configured with routings. Without this, even active messages won't be delivered. Publication contract status is important but secondary to routing. The message monitor is for tracking, not delivery. Service operation handlers are for inbound processing logic, not outbound routing enablement. Question 11. Considering the evidence, Liam modifies the save per change PeopleCode to validate data before saving. During testing, some invalid data still gets saved. Which is the most likely cause? A. The validation logic should have been placed in fielded events for earlier enforcement. B. Save per change is bypassed when saving from the secondary page. C. Validation logic must be run in component post-build for persistence. D. Save per change only runs when the user manually presses save. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Save per change executes late in the save process. While it can prevent saving validation in field, it ensures errors are caught before data even reaches the save stage, offering more robust enforcement. Save per change is not bypassed on secondary pages. If configured correctly, component post-build is unrelated to saving, and the last option is wrong because save per change also runs in programmatic saves. Question 12. From a historical standpoint, Maria uses an SQL exec to retrieve a single row but later decides to fetch multiple rows. What is the most efficient PeopleCode approach for this change? A. Use getRowSet with a AirCord to retrieve all matching rows. B. Switch to create SQL and fetch to iterate through the result set. C. Add a for loop with multiple SQL exec calls until no rows remain. D. Chained SQL exec to getRecord to retrieve multiple instances. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Create SQL with fetch reuses the SQL cursor efficiently for multiple rows, avoiding repeated parsing and execution cost of multiple SQL exec calls. GetRowSet is valid for component buffer-based fetching but is not always optimal for large datasets. GetRecord is not a valid method for retrieving multiple records this way. Multiple SQL exec calls are performance-heavy and inefficient. Question 13. When presented with a requirement to prepopulate search fields dynamically before the search page appears, which event should know a use? A. Rowing it on the search record. B. Searching it on the search record. C. Component prebuild on the component. D. Field default on the search key field. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Search init runs before the search page displays, allowing developers to set default values for search keys. Row init only runs after rows are loaded, so it can't prepopulate the search page. Component prebuild executes after search selection, making it too late. Field default is for setting defaults within the component buffer, not the search page. Question 14. To better understand integration failures, Jacob monitors the integration broker error logs and sees repeated status inactive from the receiving node. What is the most probable root cause? The sending node has invalid routing definitions. B. The receiving node explicitly rejected the message after validation. C. The gateway URL and the local node is misconfigured. D. The publication contract was not activated before sending. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. NACT means the receiving system processed the message but rejected it, often due to failed schema validation or business rule mismatches. Invalid routing affects sending, not receiving acknowledgement. Gateway misconfiguration prevents communication altogether, not selective rejection. Publication contract status affects send readiness but does not produce a NACT response. Question 15. Correct answer, B. Explanation. NACT means the receiving system processed the message but rejected it, often due to failed schema validation or business rule mismatches. Invalid routing affects sending, not receiving acknowledgement. Gateway misconfiguration prevents communication altogether, not selective rejection. Publication contract status affects send readiness but does not produce a NACT response. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Filtering with max eft ensures only the most recent effective dated row up to the current date is retrieved. Component level settings do not inherently enforce this without proper SUL. Derived work records cannot filter database retrieval at search time. Filtering only on F status ignores the effective date requirement, possibly retrieving future rows. Question 16. Through the lens of debugging, Sophie steps through PeopleCode and notices variables losing values unexpectedly between events. What is the most likely cause? A. Using component variables instead of local variables for event-specific data. B. Declaring variables as local scope instead of component scope. C. Declaring variables as global scope across application servers. D. Misuse of SQLexec causing buffer refresh during event flow. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Local variables are scoped only to the event where they are declared. The values are lost between events. Component scoped variables maintain values for the life of the component. Component versus global scope choice must be deliberate. A global scope does not span app servers. SQLexec might refresh data, but doesn't inherently cause variable loss. Question 17. By comparing application packages and funclib records, Ryan argues that both centralize reusable logic. Which distinction is most critical for maintainability? A. Application packages support object-oriented structure and encapsulation. B. Funclib records execute faster because they compile to native SUL. C. Application packages require database recompilation on each change. D. Funclib records can be version controlled outside PeopleSoft. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Application packages allow object-oriented programming in PeopleCode, enabling encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism are all key for maintainability. Funclibs lack OOP features, performance differences are negligible in most cases. Application packages don't require database recompilation in special sense. The changes are saved normally. Funclib records are still PeopleSoft objects and not inherently version controllable outside. Question 18. Upon closer examination, Ella notices a PeopleCode program fails only when run in batch mode App Engine, but not online. What is the most probable explanation? A. App Engine does not allow component interface calls. B. The program references component buffer fields unavailable in batch context. C. Batch mode disables SQLexec by default. D. Row set objects cannot be used in App Engine PeopleCode. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Component buffer references rely on an active component context. In batch mode, like App Engine, there's no component buffer, so such references fail. Component interfaces can run in App Engine. SQLexec is fully available in batch mode. Rosets are usable in App Engine as long as they are populated through SUL or other batch-appropriate means. Question 19. The underlying principle of data validation in PeopleSoft is a layered enforcement. If the developer implements only field change-based checks, what is a key risk? A. Validation will be skipped when data is loaded programmatically. B. Field change executes twice for the same change, causing duplicates. C. Field change logic can override field edit checks. D. Validation will fail when the component buffer is refreshed. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Field change triggers only on user interaction in the programmatic data. Loads like from App Engine or SCI can bypass it, leading to unvalidated data. Field change does not inherently run twice unless coded incorrectly. It doesn't override field edit, and buffer refreshes do not inherently break validation if events are correctly scoped. Question 20. Throughout the course of a migration project, Marcus moves a project via Application Designer, but notices that some related definitions are missing in the target database. Which step was most likely skipped? A. Copying the project definition along with its related definitions. B. Using the Upgrade tab to mark dependent objects for migration. C. Migrating via Data Mover instead of Application Designer. D. Setting the project to include all record PeopleCode. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. The Upgrade tab in Application Designer allows selection of related definitions like record fields, subrecords, PeopleCode for migration. If dependencies aren't marked, they won't transfer, causing missing objects in the target environment. Simply copying the project definition isn't enough. Data Mover is for data, not full definition migration, including record PeopleCode doesn't cover all dependencies. Question 21. When faced with inconsistent default values in a page field, Daniel discovers that the field default event PeopleCode is not always firing. What is the most probable reason? A. The field already has a non-blank value and loaded. B. The component search record does not include the field. C. Field default only triggers for derived work records. D. Field default runs only in the pre-build event phase. Answer. Correct answer, A. Explanation. Field default triggers only if the field value is blank when loaded. If the field already has a value from the database or earlier events, the event will not fire. Component search record membership does not control field default execution. It is not limited to derived work records, and it is not tied specifically to pre-build. It's an independent event in the component processor flow. Question 22. In the absence of proper key structure, Prayer creates a record without a primary key and uses it in a component. What behavior might this cause? A. The component won't compile. B. Multiple rows may be retrieved and updated unpredictably. C. The record will default to effective data processing. D. The page will fail with security exception. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Without a primary key, the component buffer can retrieve multiple rows without a deterministic update target, leading to unpredictable data changes. Lack of primary keys does not prevent compilation. The system does not automatically treat such records as effective dated, and missing keys are unrelated to security exceptions. Question 23. The contemporary view of performance tuning suggests reducing frequent commits in batch processing. A. Each commit can cause unnecessary component buffer refreshes. B. Commits are expensive due to transaction log writes and locks. C. Commits disable rollback capabilities for previous steps. D. Commits automatically trigger database index rebuilds. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Commits force the database to write to transaction logs and release locks, which is expensive if done too frequently, while buffer refreshes happen in components. Commits in batch don't inherently refresh component buffers. Rollback capabilities remain for work after the last commit, so the third option is incomplete. Index rebuilds are not triggered automatically by commits. Question 24. From multiple perspectives, Ethan designs a component that loads large datasets into a grid. Users report long load times, which PeopleSoft designed change would help most. A. Use a scroll area with deferred loading. B. Increase the fetch count property on the grid. C. Convert the grid to a derived work record display. D. Implement search record filtering to reduce result size. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. Filtering data at the search record level minimizes the dataset retrieved, drastically improving performance. Deferred loading helps but still retrieves unnecessary data if filters are absent. Increasing fetch count loads more data at once, which can worsen load times. Derived work records are for temporary storage, not database result filtering. Question 25. Throughout the course of error handling improvements, Sarah adds a catch block for a general exception type but misses specific SQL exceptions. What is the impact? A. All errors will still be caught in the general block. B. SQL exceptions will bypass the general catch unless nested correctly. C. SQL exceptions will automatically convert to general exceptions. D. The program will terminate on SQL exceptions without catching them. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. In PeopleCode, specific exception types must be caught before a general catch block in a try-catch structure. Otherwise, some specific exceptions, like SQL, might bypass handling if improperly ordered or scoped. General blocks do not automatically handle all exception subclasses. Exceptions are not auto-converted, and the program won't always terminate unless unhandled. Question 26. By evaluating migration issues, Michael finds that a record PeopleCode did not migrate with his project. What step was most likely skipped? A. Including the record definition in the project. B. Checking the include related definitions option for migration. C. Running compare report before migrating. D. Setting the record to upgrade mode. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Related definitions like record PeopleCode must be explicitly included during migration via the include related definitions option. Merely including the record definition is not enough. Compare reports help detect differences, but don't include missing objects automatically. Upgrade mode applies to copy behavior, but not inclusion. Question 27. In contrast to static record definitions, Logan uses dynamic SQL in PeopleCode to retrieve data from a table chosen at runtime. What is a potential drawback? A. It bypasses all database security. B. It prevents the use of bind variables, increasing SQL injection risk. C. It disables SQL caching and query plan reuse. D. It forces table creation at runtime. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Dynamic SQL, where the table name changes at runtime, can prevent effective query plan caching by the database, impacting performance. It does not inherently bypass security if parameters are handled properly. Bind variables can still be used for values, though not for table names. PeopleCode does not create tables at runtime from dynamic SQL. Question 20. During the process of page design, MIR wants to ensure a field is hidden unless a certain condition is met when the page is loaded. Which PeopleCode event is best? A. Component post build. B. Row init. C. Prebuild. D. Field default. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Row init is ideal for setting field properties like visible hidden based on row level conditions when data is loaded. Component post build can also modify properties but acts after all rows are initialized, which may be less efficient for row specific logic. Prebuild runs before data load, so it cannot make visibility decisions based on data. Field default is for default values. Question 29. With the advent of integration broker enhancements, Noah configures asynchronous messaging to an external system. What must be ensured for guaranteed delivery? A. The queue must be set to guaranteed mode and the subscription contract active. B. The routing must be synchronous with retry logic enabled. C. The gateway must run in pass-through mode. D. The node must be marked as the default local node. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Guaranteed delivery in integration broker requires the queue to be set to guaranteed mode and the subscription contract active to track delivery status and retries. Synchronous routing is unrelated to guaranteed delivery, which applies to asynchronous processing. Pass-through mode is for routing logic, not reliability. Default local node designation is unrelated to delivery guarantees. Question 30. The common thread among failed batch processes in Ava's environment is the use of uncommitted data from previous step. Which design approach solves this? A. Move dependent steps into single commit unit. B. Add SQLexec to refresh all buffers before each step. C. Use global variable to carry data across steps. D. Switch from app engine to online component processing. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Combining dependent steps within the same commit unit ensures they operate on consistent transactional data, preventing issues with uncommitted data dependencies. Refreshing buffers doesn't ensure transactional consistency. Global variables can carry data but don't solve commit dependency issues. Switching to online processing is unrelated and impractical for batch dependencies.